first, let's talk about CDC pipelines and kind of get an understanding of how they work. What you're seeing is a really high-level abstraction of databases. Databases often have a logging structure that are associated with them. It's something that captures whatever has happened in the database transactionally, events. An inserted record is captured, an updated record is captured, a deleted record is captured. CDC is the facility of leveraging that information that's captured in logs and being able to translate that into information that can be stored in a downstream analytical system. And often that type of functionality will provide you near real-time access to data in your business environment. Now, when you're building a CDC pipeline, and if you were building this from scratch, say you were writing some code to do it, you got to consider a number of things. You got to consider the complexity of the setup and how hard would it be to maintain that piece of code or application once it's built. You've got to understand how to manage your performance bottlenecks and make sure that it's an efficient process. You've got to account for scalability. As my data volume grows, will I be able to scale this application, this piece of code, so that as that data volume grows, I can meet those expectations. I can meet SLAs or whatever may be defined for the downstream systems. One of the most critical areas is ensuring that the data is consistent, that you're not, corrupting the data or perhaps dropping the data and there's missing data. You're making business decisions on incorrect information. Now, let's talk a little bit about the benefits of using change data capture replication. One of the things that's the most powerful benefit is real-time information. Having information at your fingertips to make business decisions in near real time in a competitive environment. If you're looking at refreshed near real-time data and making a business decision, that is so much more impactful than looking at something that was refreshed 24 hours ago or last week. On top of that, because you're doing CDC, the recovery is much simpler. You can do a refresh much simpler and much more easily. And additionally, you're also going to minimize your operational costs and some of the impact on your database. So if you're running a lot of queries against an operational database, you're putting more load on that database above and beyond what the application is doing itself by leveraging the logging structure that's underneath the covers of that database. You're able to offload that operational cost and minimize that cost as part of this overall architecture. Now, when we talk about automating CDC pipelines with Hevo, we really remove all of that complexity I just described for you. We try to make it very much a set it and forget it environment. Again, we're going to enable those faster decisions with the pipelines that we build. We're going to minimize the disruption to any production workloads. We're going to take that workload away from the database and leverage the underpinnings of the logging. And again, help you with the operational costs associated with manual tasks, development, maintenance, all those things. Those things traditionally just go away when you leverage CDC with a pipeline and Hevo data. Now, there's some ways you can approach change data capture. You could look at timestamps in your database. Some databases may be set up where, as a record is updated, inserted, you will get a timestamp. And what you're then able to do is run a SQL statement where you're filtering records on a time date stamp. You can also use a snapshot in time. What does the database look at this very moment? Take that information and replicate it to a target system. Inside the database itself, you could introduce triggers. An event occurs, a record is updated, a record is deleted, and a trigger could trigger some downstream process. Or as we're talking about today, you can leverage the logging structures that are part of databases today. Now, we've helped a lot of organizations with their challenges around change data capture and managing large data in their environment. Deliver is basically an e-commerce fulfillment organization, for organizations like eBay, Amazon, Walmart, Shopify. You can just imagine the data volumes that they have. And they came to us with a challenge, and that was to help them manage their data volumes and really reduce the efforts they have. They had MySQL as a backend database, and they're trying to replicate a lot of information, the significant volume of information, to Snowflake. Now, the gentleman, Emmett Murphy, who evaluated Hevo, selected Hevo because we have automated pipelines and a very easy to use platform that makes managing and scaling that data volume so much simpler. Now let's just look at some of the benefits that they received. A 10% productivity increase across their data engineering team. The team was much more efficient. They could focus on higher value tasks. In essence, we saved them 80 hours per month. That's 2 man weeks. Imagine if your team had 80 extra hours to work on projects to accomplish high value tasks. As part of what Deliver achieved in implementing Hevo, they saved those 80 hours, and they're actually able to manage 2x the data load capacity that they were previously able to manage when they were doing things manually. So they saw significant benefits using Hevo's CDC pipelines.